Today, I get to ride the Norco Optic, perhaps the single most requested bike that I check out on this channel. To get a feel for the little Norco Optic, we headed south to Portland, Oregon to ride the new Rocky Point Trail area. This region is a private timberlands that are advocated for by the Northwest Trail Alliance, and if you visit the Northwest Trail Alliance website, you can become a member, and yes, you can ride these trails too. Stay tuned, I've got another video coming from these trails where we meet and ride with a couple of the local trail builders. I hear you're Thomas.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Jeff, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
oh,
meet you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
It was an honor to meet Kirsten and Thomas both, and I had a great time riding their trails.
Already is good.
Thanks to both of them for their handiwork. I want to give a special shout out to Jensen USA as they made this video possible. Thank you, Jensen. Jensen has some Norco Optics in stock and available now, and I've got a link in the YouTube description below over to Jensen USA, and anything you purchase there will directly help support my channel. The whole impetus for this trip was Derek. He's a Norco employee who lives in Portland now, and he's been riding the Rocky Point trails for some time.
How are you?
Awesome.
Cool.
So good to see you again.
I didn't recognize, yeah, good to see you too.
So what bike are we using today?
We are using the Optic C2.
I feel bad because I'm standing here talking to you holding a phone, but this has our setup info, so.
Oh, that's what
Height, I'm 174 centimeters. Weight, 172 pounds in kg. How do you do that?
I've just learned pounds and inches and it took me a while, but I'm getting there.
To get started, we set the bike up completely as recommended by the Norco website. Furthermore, we left the bike fully stock. This did provide a few challenges, and let me explain real quick, this is not a review, this is kind of a weird first look type video, so bear with me here. Rider skill setting, I'll slide that over, and then offset setup default.
So offset 1 is over the front, elbows up. Offset 2 is how I ride, way over the back.
Oh yeah, I'm totally off the back.
You are?
When I'm riding normally, my butt's basically over the rear axle, which to me is pretty far over the back of the bike. In fact, it's further back than what most instructors say is correct. At the same time, my head is basically centered over the handlebars and stem, and that's because I'm very low to the bicycle. As far as I can tell, this type of body positioning is totally valid, but I don't know if it counts as being forwards or backward. Yeah,
oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'm like if you see my videos, I'm always on the rear wheel.
It makes you a good manual rail.
So here we have our setup. So stem length 45 millimeters, stem spacers 15.
Ooh, you got
10, 10 and 5.
15.
Look at that. What lengths? What's our?
It doesn't even say. I believe that is a 45.
This is a size medium. I am 5'8". I weigh right now 172 pounds. So we got 200 PSI in back, 78 PSI up front. We set up all of our compression and rebound as per the Norco website ride a line setup guide. Normally I ride a Shimano drivetrain, brakes. I'm sponsored by Shimano. I'm also a sponsored P&W Components rider. I swapped over my P&W grips because it was easy and keep the contact points consistent. I also have my own XT pedals on here. Normally I run a P&W range bar, range stem, loam dropper post, and loam lever. I also ride Industry 9 wheels on my own bikes, and generally I ride WTB tough casing tires, or basically downhill tires on all my bikes. So funny riding a stock bike, it's like 10 pounds lighter than what I'm used to. The bike was light and nimble, but there was a major hurdle, the stock handlebar wheelies. This feels like it's like 775 or something, 780, I don't know.
It might be a 780.
Oh, bottomed out. I think we're gonna try this thing as per the Norco website. It's already a stock bike, so I'll try the stock setup. It'd be cool to change a few things, but I'm gonna hold my little horses and we'll get to that. Before hitting any actual trails, there's a little warm-up loop just outside of the parking lot, and I wanted to hit it a couple times to kind of dial things in and get a baseline feel for the bike. Oh man. See how wonky I got in that corner? Well, don't worry, it gets better next lap, just wait. And right there on an ankle high jump, I bottomed the fork out so hard, it shocked my wrist pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some more air pressure in the fork. I just bottomed the daylights out of it, so I don't actually feel safe riding it as soft as it is. Let's try 10 PSI more. 88, 90, right around 90. Okay, let's try the same track again. Oh. Well, there's that. To say I wasn't feeling quite ready to go out of the parking lot after the drive is totally fair. Okay, it feels way better. Turns out the fork's compression was turned just about all the way to the max. I backed them all the way out to as soft as they could go and then put them both in about 4 turns. 4 clicks of compression, and we will hope for the best. I hear you're Thomas.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, meet you.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Well, it turns out Thomas is an absolutely ripping rider. Not only has he done a ton of trail work here at Rocky Point, but look at him. He's shredding. So on to the bifocal. I mean the sight. I mean the optic. That's the one. Yeah, so it's a super fun bike. Now, the first day, I was really struggling. Nice. So, turns out the Norco Ride-Aligned website spec sheet suggests 760 bars, 40 mil stem, 20 mil bar rise, and sure enough, the stock bars and everything on there are totally different. 780 width, 50 or even 60 length stem, and the bars are super low. I didn't feel very dialed on that first ride. And furthermore, I really don't like using the word review in any kind of bike video unless I can actually spend, you know, at least a few weeks or whatnot riding something. In this case, I have 2 days on this bike, and all the parts are stock. And they're not parts that I ride. The parts that I generally ride, I'm used to, and I've experienced them on multiple different platforms of bikes, so I kind of... Whoa, builder line! Keep them as constants throughout my little ride reviews or whatnot. Phew! Nice! Yeah, Thomas. Phew! That said, I did have a good time on this bike, and something like this with somewhat slacker, more aggressive geometry is a good fit for these kind of flow trails. Having worked in the bike industry for as long as I did, 7 years at IBIS, 3 years at WTB, I kind of see where this bike came from. It came from the employees at Norco, probably setting up the site with some different suspension and building out their own little short travel slack angled bike. Yeah. The brass is probably saying, that doesn't make sense. We don't need to make a bike in that category because that's not a category. And sure enough, the bean counters will agree and such a bike will not be produced. However, that's not the case here, and they went ahead and made a short travel bike with more longer travel style geometry. And for someone that really knows how to ride, it's a really cool setup. That's fun. Yeah. It's like a roller coaster.
I got a little loose.
That was sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I had a great time riding the Optic on day 1. I can't really give you any actual specific feedback about it because I was just so discombobulated with so many things being different and having driven so far. So that brings us to day 2. So we rode this one last night, and over here we got a buck knife. Right here we got the Optic. With a little bit of negotiating, I was able to swap on my personal setup. All we really did was swap on the bars and stem from my personal bike. The sizing is now correct. Roller coaster. This Optic compares directly to my personal Ripley. I'm running a 140 fork on my Ripley, and with my WTB tires, it's at a 65-degree head angle. Now, the way the two bikes feel on the trail are a little bit different. The Ripley is maybe a tad more efficient when you go into pedal, but it's also a little bit harder to get off the ground. Oh, that chump's gonna be hard to hit. I did notice that at the end stroke of the suspension, the Optic had more progressivity built into it. That said, you can adjust that to a certain degree with the amount of air volume reducers, and we did not crack open the shock to see how many spacers were in it. Once again, this is not a review video, this is more of an experience, shall we say. Little jump. I had a great time riding the Optic, and it's a good fit on these flow trails, but I'll be 100% straight up. If I had the choice between a short travel bike, whether it be the Optic, the Ripley, or whatever 120 mil travel and shorter bike, versus something that's more longer travel, like the Norco Sight, the IBIS Ripmo, the Rocky Mountain Altitude, or even the Instinct, I would rather take the longer travel bike. So this thing competes directly with the IBIS Ripley, but man, it does feel a little different on the trail. It's spec'd for a bigger, burlier fork, and it has a little more travel, and the travel's a tad more progressive. A lot of folks think that with a playful riding style, you're probably better served with a shorter travel bike. Well, I've actually thought the opposite of that, and it's because if you end up plucking off all kinds of stuff that's not supposed to be jumped, you end up landing flat all the time. This means you need a little bit more progressivity in travel for those bigger hits. A shorter travel bike can be great fun, but its window of performance is quite a bit narrower. If you set it up for one thing, it'll really sacrifice a lot in the other. You've robbed Peter to pay Paul. And now Peter's calling you in a hurry because he wants his money back because you just went sailing past what might have been a landing and you are indeed hucking too flat. Okay, I want to go this way. We'll drop in. All right, there's a nice one. One spot where a bike like the Optic or even the Ripley with more aggressive suspension would be really cool are the flatter trails of states like Florida. See, on this bike, I'm having a lot of fun and really enjoying it through the turns. And on the smooth, it's great. But on those bigger huckers, I'm not sending it blind like I might on the site. That concludes the riding coverage with the Optic, and I do have that link in the description below over to Jensen. Man. Thanks again to Jensen for making all this possible. That was fun. It was way fun. Really wish we swapped over the cockpit yesterday. That felt a lot better. That trail's pretty cool. Super mellow, but it was fun.
Yep.
Buck knife looked really cool.
Buck knife is really cool.
Yeah, we got to ride that next time. I wouldn't mind getting an Optic and getting my own stuff on it. That bike is really fun. Thank you all for joining me. Thanks to Derek and Norco for lining this up. Thanks to Northwest Trails Alliance for all their work and advocating for these trails. If you haven't yet, please do hit that red subscribe button below. I post 1 to 2 videos a week. Oftentimes they have riding, and oftentimes they talk about bikes. Without anything more, I'll see you guys in the next video.